I like Pokemon. Can you tell?
I'm in heaven! Here a joy, everywhere a nurse joy!
Hello and welcome back to yet another video. This week I am going to be making a Nurse Joy costume to attend my friend's Pokemon themed 30th birthday. So without any further ado, this is how I made my Nurse Joy costume. First of all, let's start with the dress. I'm using Simplicity S9006. I have 3.5 meters of a pink cotton and a 22-inch invisible zip. First things first, let's get all the pattern pieces cut out. Once all the pattern pieces were cut out, I sewed up the darts in the front of the bodice and the back. And of course, after all the darts were sewn, I then pressed them nice and flat. After pressing the darts, I sew the front and back pieces together at the shoulder and side seams. After I've sewn them in place, I then press all of the seams open. Next I move on to the skirt, so I have the centre back pieces here, and starting 3/4 of the way up the skirt, I sew the two back pieces together. Then I sew the back pieces to the front at the sides. Here I am checking the fit of everything so far on my mannequin, and once I'm happy with how it's fitting, I sew the skirt to the bodice for real. After the skirt's attached to the top, it's time to add the invisible zip in the back. I do this using an invisible zip foot on my machine. Here I am checking that the zip works, and of course it does, so it's on to making the collar. First I cut out some iron-on interfacing for the pieces that need it. And then of course, like the name suggests, the interfacing gets ironed on to those pieces. Then I pin the interfaced facing to the neckline of the dress and sew that in place. Then I sew the two collar pieces together, making sure to leave that bottom edge open. And this is so that I can turn it the right way out, but before I do that, I trim the corners here so that they're nice and pointy when I turn it the right way. After both pieces have been turned out, they then get pinned to the facing of the dress and sewn in place. And finally, for the collar, the last bit of facing gets sewn encompassing the collar and the facing, and then I didn't film it, but then it gets turned over and that folded edge you see there gets hand stitched down, hiding all of those seams. Onto the sleeves. So the first thing I do is run a gathering stitch along the top and bottom edges of the sleeves. I then adjust the gathers by hand to my liking. Next, the sleeves get folded in half, and then I sew the side seam just there. Onto the sleeve band, so the first thing I do is cut out some more iron-on interfacing and iron that in place. Then I mark the seam allowance along the bottom edge and I fold that over and iron that down in place. Next I fold the sleeve band in half and sew it along the side seam here. Then it gets pinned to the bottom edge of the sleeve and sewn in place. I then fold the band in half and begin the long and tedious process of hand sewing that folded edge to the sleeve. And ta-da! Here is a finished sleeve, and here I am checking how it looks against the mannequin for some reason. So of course the next step is sewing the sleeve to the dress. With the sleeves attached, the last part of the dress to do is hem it. And here I am using some horsehair braid and sewing that to the bottom edge of the dress, about 1 centimeter from the edge. I then fold this edge over and iron it down, and this makes it easier to do the next step, which is using a large stitch length and sewing a 2 centimeter hem on the bottom of the dress. With the dress done, it is now time for the apron. For the pattern, I'm using Simplicity 8571 and 2.5 meters of white cotton. First things first, it is time to cut out all of the pattern pieces again. I'm starting with the neckband, which I fold in half and sew along the bottom edge here. Then, using a loop turner, I turn it the right way out. Or at least I struggle to. I then attach the neckband to one side of the bib. Once the band's in place, I then sew the front and back sides of the bib together, making sure not to catch that neckband in the process. I also understitch the top seam of the bib so that it sits nice and, yeah, like this. Next, I run some gathering stitches along the apron part and then I gather those by hand. Okay, it's a new morning and I've now reached the part of the sewing experience where I'm meant to be attaching the waistband to the bib and the apron part of the apron. I cannot, for the life of me, make sense of the instructions that are written down here. I started reading them last night and went, no, this is too hard. I'll deal with it in the morning after I've had some sleep. It's the morning and I still don't understand what they mean. It looks like you sew the bib to the waistband along the top edge here and then you sew the apron to the bottom edge. But then it looks like you then fold the waistband in half over itself with the bib and then sew it down but leave the ends free. So I really have no idea what they want me to do here and I think I'm just going to wing it and do something that I think looks nice because it is doing my head in trying to decipher these hieroglyphs or whatever you want to call them. After having a breakdown about the waistband, I attach the bib to the top part of it. Then I do a nice little folded edge hem on the apron itself. With the apron edges all hemmed, I then pin and sew it in place to the waistband. Okay, so this is the part in the instructions that I am just completely lost at. I cannot figure out what they're trying to say. So what I'm going to do instead is I folded the waistband in half and I think I'm going to machine stitch from here to the end of the waistband just to seal it, if you will. And then this section here I think I will hand sew so that it looks nice from the front, and then I think that part there just flips up like that when you wear it. So let's give it a go. I know I said I was going to hand sew the middle part with the bib, but at this point I was just over this costume, so as you can see here, machine stitched all the way. Then onto the one singular pocket, so I do some gathering stitches just here. Then I fold it along the fold line here and iron that so it gives me a guideline for later. And then pulling those gathering stitches I just did, I iron the seam allowance along the edges of the pocket. Then moving back to the top edge, I fold it over so that the right sides are together and sew the two side seams here. I then turn the top edge back out and then sew the pocket somewhere on the apron so that it looks right, matching the reference. Onto the wig. So I know I don't usually film my wig styling on here, and that's because I'm not really a confident wig styler. Give me human hair any day of the week and I can make it look incredible, but synthetic plastic, it just doesn't compute in my brain. However, because this costume was quite simple and I feel like the wig is quite a big part of it, I'm going to attempt to film styling it. It'll probably just be a time lapse anyway, but yeah, here we go. So the first thing I do is use a crimping tool on a low heat setting and crimp the entire wig. This helps to give the wig a lot more volume, and I find that very necessary when styling anime type wigs. With the wig all crimped, it's now onto styling. So the first thing I do is section off the hair into ponytails using the crisscrossing method in the back there. I then tease up the bangs and using a curling iron, curl them up in place. I then attempt to turn the ponytails into loops, and well, you guys will see how well that goes. Okay, so here it is on me. It's okay. It's not the greatest. Unfortunately, the wig wasn't as long as I thought it was, so I wasn't able to make the loops as loopy as I wanted to. When I put it on with the actual costume, I'll pin it to my head a lot better so you won't see so much of my sideburns on the side here, but yeah. It's okay. And I'm thinking I might actually braid these as well so that they stay together a bit more, because yeah, like I said, they weren't long enough, so I can't mold them as well as I wanted to. Yeah, she's okay. Time to make a hat. Finally, it's time for the hat and bow. Okay, so I just drew this template for a nurse's hat because I couldn't print this one online because my printer's currently out of ink. So yeah, I just sort of winged it like I do with everything, and here's how it looks on the wig. So yeah, it's just a paper template, but I'm just going to cut it out of a thick felt now. I think it looks fine, honestly. I'm kind of done with this costume at this point, so fine is good enough for me right now. So using the template I just drew, I trace it onto some stiff felt, and as you can see, I extended the top and bottom edges here. That's just to give it a more cartoony look. After cutting it out, I then begin to fold it just to see how it's going to look. Happy with it, I do a tacking stitch in the back here to hold these back pieces in place. And ta-da! That is the hat all done. It's really that simple. Now all I have to do is put a cross right here. And to do that, first I draw a cross on some pink felt and cut it out, and then using some glue, stick it in place. Now onto the bow. So the first thing I do is cut the interfacing piece here out of that same stiff felt, and the rest of the bow pieces get cut out of the same white cotton that I used for the apron. Now that all the pieces have been cut out, it's time to assemble them. First I sew the two bow pieces together on the side seams, then I sew up the tail pieces. The bow part itself gets stuffed with the stiff felt and a layer of batting. I didn't have any batting, so I just used some polar fleece I had lying around, but it works the same. This is so that the bow stays nice and perky, if you will. With the bows stuffed and the pieces joined together in the centre there, it is then time to join the two tail pieces together and attach them to the bow. This is done by gathering them and then stitching them in place, and then everything gets hidden under the knot here. And once that was done, I sewed a little pin on the back so that it could be pinned to the apron. And with that, the whole costume is done. Who's ready for a reveal? So there you have it. That is how I made my Nurse Joy costume from Pokemon. Now I'm really happy with how this one turned out. For a 2-day build, I cannot be mad at it. The whole thing went together really easy. And honestly, if it wasn't for that shambles with the waistband that I had, I probably would have gotten it finished in 1 day. It was that quick to make. And that comes down to the fact that I didn't have to alter the patterns for this costume, and that is always a win. I had an awesome time at the birthday party, and I also made a couple of other costumes there as well. I made my partner's Barry shirt, another friend's Snorlax onesie, and of course I made the birthday boy's Ash Ketchum as well, and yeah, it was just a really fun time overall. Speaking of fun though, if you had fun watching this video, it'd be really awesome if you could like, maybe comment, and if you really liked it, maybe you could consider subscribing as well. I do a lot of sewing, crafting, and fun related things here on this channel, and I usually try and upload every week or so. And with all that being said, I'll see you guys next week. Goodbye!